My wife and I had been married for 20 years. I genuinely thought that I had found the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and I was very thankful for her. We met through mutual friends and hit it off. My buddy kept telling me that he knew someone I would get along with, and he was right. When we got together, it wasn't an official date by any means. We were just hanging out at my friend's house playing some board games. My wife was being weirdly competitive, and I thought it was adorable, so I ended up asking her out. We had a lot in common and really enjoyed spending time together. Marriage was a no-brainer for us when it came time for it. We both wanted a family and that classic white picket fence life. We were young when we got married because we wanted to start a family. My wife was adamant about not wanting to be an old grandmother, which I thought was kind of funny. She wanted to be able to keep up with children and grandkids. Over the years, we had 4 children. About 10 years ago, we thought we wanted to have one more child, then call it quits. The 4 kids we had were amazing, but my wife really wanted a daughter. It was a stressful time in our marriage because getting pregnant was difficult. It was even more stressful when my wife miscarried about 3 months after we found out she was pregnant. The entire family was broken about it, and even though we were upset, we all stayed together and honored the unborn child that my wife lost. My wife took it harder than anybody else in the family, but no matter what she said or did, I was there to help her. The reason I mention this is that when the shoe was on the other foot, my wife was completely absent from me. Last year, I was in a really bad car accident and broke many bones in my body. All the doctors said that it was a miracle that I survived. Even though I survived, there are some things in my life that will never be the same. I'm paralyzed from the waist down due to spinal damage. Before I recovered, I had 2 broken arms and a broken neck. I could hardly do anything on my own. After the accident, I needed the support of my family to help me function. I could think, feel, and talk, but I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. This is where the vows in sickness and in health really come into play. When my wife was struggling after the miscarriage, I was there every step of the way. When I literally couldn't feed myself, she would stay away from me and leave my children to take care of me. It took quite some time and a fair amount of rehabilitation for me to get to where I am today. I'm going to be wheelchair-bound for the rest of my life, which is something I've been getting used to. Once I was able to get out of bed and roam around the house more, I started to notice some things were off. Aside from her avoiding me like the plague, she was very secretive about a lot of things going on in her life. For example, when she would go grocery shopping, she would be gone for 4 hours. When she got a phone call, she would answer it secretly and excuse herself to take the call outside. The entire time we had been married, she never did anything like that. On top of that, she had been getting very into her appearance. She wore makeup everywhere she went, made sure her hair was nice, and dressed up. I didn't understand why a 20-minute trip to the grocery store required all of that, but I didn't say anything. While I was bedridden, I had been stewing over some of my feelings for her not taking care of me. I felt like she abandoned me, and I had a lot of issues with that. Whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she would just shut down, so eventually, I stopped. One night she was supposed to be at her sister's house helping her pack up some old things from their parents. When she left, she told me she was only going to be gone for a few hours and that she would be back in time to cook dinner. Our kids weren't really cooking at the time. Our oldest was 17 and had a job that he worked most nights, and the others were less than 13. None of them had really developed many cooking skills in their brief time on Earth, and I couldn't cook in my condition, so we kind of relied on my wife to be there to cook for us. Time went on, and my wife didn't show up. I started to get worried, so I called her, and she didn't answer her phone. I called her sister and asked her if she was there, and she told me that she was. She mentioned that my wife had been drinking some wine and ended up passing out on the couch. I was annoyed at the idea that she would just sleep over at her sister's house without saying anything, but I was glad she was safe. We ended up having to splurge and order dinner that night, which we had really been trying to avoid because we were on a tight budget since I couldn't work. The following day, my wife came back home, and she looked like a mess. I made some jokes about how she must have had a rough night drinking, but I didn't want to cause any issues if she was feeling ill or hungover. It wasn't even that big of a deal, at least it wasn't until it happened again. The second time it happened, it was a very similar situation. I was understandably annoyed and frustrated that my wife had let something like that happen twice. I could understand every now and then spending the night at her sister's and sharing a few glasses, but getting belligerently drunk to the point that you pass out is an entirely different story. It felt immature and negligent to me. With everything that had been going on, I really started to suspect that my wife was up to something else. I had no reason not to believe she wasn't at her sister's house when she told me, but I thought more about the extra hours when she was supposed to be grocery shopping or the superfluous errands she would run. If she was having some kind of affair, she would have had ample time to do so. One day when she went to the grocery store, I swapped phones with her. We had the same phone, and my wife, for some strange reason, refused to put a case on hers. So, while she had her back turned, I took the case off my phone and put it on hers, thinking that it was her own. Everything went according to plan, and she walked out of the house with my phone in her purse. I knew she was far enough away, so I unlocked her phone and started looking through it. I found way more dirt on my wife than I ever thought I would have. I was honestly in disbelief when I saw how many other men she was talking to. She had downloaded a dating app on her phone and was talking to several men on that. In her bio and a lot of the messages, she mentioned being recently divorced and just looking for a good time. She gave her number out to a lot of different guys, and they exchanged pictures and flirty messages. It was clear from the context and the messages that she had met up with several of them. What struck me most of all in the messages was seeing one from somebody that I knew from work. I was humiliated to see that they had been together. He messaged my wife when he saw her and said he was sorry that we had been divorced, mentioning that he didn't know anything about it. My wife lied and told him that it was very recent and they were trying to keep it quiet. They both then confessed that they had been attracted to each other for quite some time. The guy from my work was married to another one of my coworkers. Everyone in the office was married, so seeing him on a dating app was a major red flag. The most heartbreaking realization of all of it was seeing that she had started messaging these guys about a week after my accident. She hadn't been there for me at all to help me recover. Instead, she was going around behind my back and fooling around with all these other guys. I was irate when I found all of this out. She had completely forsaken our wedding vows and treated me as if I were gum on the bottom of her shoe. I gave 20 years of my life to her, dedicating myself to her entirely, and she stabbed me in the back. I gathered as much evidence from her phone as I could and emailed it all to myself so I could send it to the divorce attorney that I planned on contacting. I'm divorcing her, but I wanted to get back at her. I wanted to show the world who she really was. She wasn't the loving and doting soccer mom like everyone thought she was, and I wanted to rip that mask off to reveal her true colors. I put her phone back where I originally found it so I could pretend like I didn't know anything. She came back from the grocery store about 5 hours after she left with only a few bags of groceries. I actually had a birthday coming up before I found any of this out. I had already been telling my wife that I wanted to have some kind of party so I could get everyone that I knew together and spend time with them. It had been quite some time since I'd seen many of our friends and my coworkers, so I thought it would be a nice opportunity to do so. My intentions for the party had completely changed after I found out she was cheating. I still threw the party, and I made sure she invited everybody from my office, as well as all of our family members and friends. The day of the party came, and we were having a great time. Everybody was asking me how I was doing, telling my wife they were so happy that I was okay, and she was agreeing with them with a big smile on her face. I even heard her comment on how difficult the journey to my recovery had been for all of us. That was what really set me off. Hearing her take credit for my recovery when she had absolutely nothing to do with it was infuriating. I immediately turned around and called her out for it. A lot of people in the crowd were obviously a little concerned about our argument, but they weren't saying anything. They were all just listening curiously. When I noticed everybody was listening, I turned right around and explained to them that my wife wasn't there for me. Instead, she was out sleeping with a bunch of random guys and my coworker, who I pointed to when I said it. His wife looked at him very confused. Then I elaborated more. I said a few quotes that were in their messages to each other, and my wife was clearly about to explode on me. My wife ended the party early and sent everyone home. The wife of my coworker poured a drink in her hair before leaving. She called her a flurry of names and walked out, telling her husband that she wanted him out of the house. I told my wife that I didn't want to talk about anything. I had all the evidence that I needed, and I was already in contact with a divorce attorney. Everything in the house was under my name, and I wanted her out as soon as possible. I told her that she would be getting nothing from me, to which she replied that she was entitled to half, if not more. When the divorce battle came around, I smugly walked away with everything I owned because she cheated. She wasn't entitled to a dime of my money. Child custody was easy because her kids hated her for everything she did. That was never my intent, but they saw a woman who cheated on their badly injured father and didn't want anything to do with her. I couldn't blame them, though I do hope they will come around eventually to forgive her so they can have a relationship with her. As it turns out, her sister was covering for her all the nights that she said she passed out at her house. Her sister actually encouraged her to seek extramarital sex. Apparently, my wife had been complaining about how she didn't think we would be able to sleep together anymore, so her sister gave her some information about dating apps. Conclusion and advice from our channel to the author of this story. Hey there, it's tough to wrap your head around the chaos you've been through, but here's the thing, you've made it through the storm. The divorce is done, and now it's time for a new chapter. First things first, take a deep breath. You've been through a lot, and you deserve a moment to just be. Now, moving forward, here's some advice. Give yourself time. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Take the time you need to process everything that's gone down. It's okay not to have it all figured out right away. Lean on support. Friends, family, whoever's got your back, let them in. Share your feelings and let them be there for you. You're not alone in this, and you don't have to carry the weight by yourself. Focus on your well-being. Physical and mental health should be top priorities. Whether it's hitting the gym, picking up a new hobby, or talking to a professional, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness isn't about excusing someone else's actions, it's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. Holding on to anger only weighs you down, so consider working towards forgiving, not for them, but for your peace of mind. Explore new opportunities. This is your chance to rediscover who you are outside of that relationship. Take up interests you've neglected, try new things, and embrace the adventure of finding yourself again. Keep communication open with kids. Your children might be going through their own struggles. Keep the lines of communication open, be patient, and let them express their feelings. It's a process, but your understanding can make a big difference. Legal matters. Ensure all the legal stuff is squared away. Consult with professionals to make sure everything is fair and square. This will give you peace of mind as you move forward. Look to the future. This isn't the end, it's a new beginning. Your future is wide open, and you have the power to shape it. Dream big, set goals, and focus on building a life that brings you joy. Remember, there's no set timeline for healing. Be patient with yourself and celebrate the small victories along the way. You've got this.